in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, there lived a man. Obviously there lived a lot of men, but there lived this one man in particular, very, very clever man, Englishman, go figure, who went by the name of Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton, as he was latterly known, as he served his king, his country, and indeed the worldwide scientific community quite admirably. I mean, let's face it, he did invent gravity and apples. So you could just imagine how dull your school lunch would have been without that sweet, golden, delicious crunch right at the end of it as you float aimlessly around the canteen. Now the thing is, I don't know what Mr. Newton was like on the ballroom dance floor, whether he was a shaker or a groover or what, but he did have a penchant for motion. Now, you're probably wondering what motion has to do with our hobby, where stillness of hand, body and mind are of paramount importance so that we can achieve our marvellous miniatures. But he was very taken by the aforementioned energetic state of matter that he actually wrote 3 laws to govern it. Now, it's the 3rd law that interests me in terms of relevance to this video. Now, the 3rd law states, actione contrarium semper et equilium esse reactionem. In other words, to every action, there is always opposed an equal reaction. Now, we often use that as a euphemistic way of describing how the universe likes to balance itself out. Yin and yang, as it were. You've got the Christ, you've got the Antichrist. You've got the Agent Smith, you've got the Neo. You've got useful people, and you have others. How does this relate to our video? You may be asking yourself repeatedly. Well, if this was the positive reaction, that would mean that this was the universe trying to balance itself out. Now, this is not a complaint video. It's not a rant or anything of that ilk. But the Tamiya kit that I've just finished is what we would call in the trade a shake and bake kit. If I was to trim everything off the sprues, throw them back in the box, pour in some glue, give the box a shuggle, chances are what would come out the other side would probably resemble a Corsair. Such is the fit. I can't quite say the same about this particular kit. To say that this kit fought me at every single step of its construction, bar one, would be an underestimation. No, it would actually be 100% perfectly correct. The bar one was the cockpit. Now you got a little bit of resin, you got a little bit of photo etch as part of the kit, and the cockpit went together nicely, shaping up, nice little detail and attention to detail as well. But then that's where the trouble started. The second I tried to put the fuselage halves together and couldn't, should have been a red flag. Now I know these are short run kits. It's not like the Tamiya. I mean, half the planet is currently building the Tamiya Corsair. I think it was me and some bloke from Azerbaijan was toiling away on this thing for the past few months. That is not a bad thing. I've said this on countless videos that in theory kits like this are the ones that make you a better modeller, because you'll learn how to model. The Corsair was just basically an exercise in assembly. No hassles, no nothing. This kit, on the other hand, really did, I would say, tested me to my limits. There were a few occasions where I actually felt like balling my fist and bringing it down hard upon said kit. And it's not the kit's fault, that's the modeller's fault, obviously. The kit didn't pretend to be anything other than it was. But when I tried to put the fuselage halves together and they wouldn't go together, and then I started paring down the sides of the cockpit flooring and walls and the bulkhead to the point where they actually no longer made contact on both sides, and still the fuselage halves wouldn't go together, I realised that maybe, not that I'd bitten off more than I could chew, that would be a ridiculous thing to say, but that I was in for a long haul here. I had to shim the fuselage, I had to resculpt the underside, and the engine bulkhead, the forward bulkhead that had to be trimmed. The wings were, the fit was more of a suggestion than an actual fit itself. Fortunately there wasn't a lot of surface detail to be lost, but I did have to rescribe, and then you usually found I had to fill something else and then have to rescribe again. That happened several times. If you remember back when I first mentioned this kit, I really extolled the virtues of having your canopy parts include parts of the fuselage. Yes, that is wonderful, providing they line up. I had to seriously pare down one side of the fuselage just in front of the canopy, and then on the other side pare down the actual fuselage so that everything mated up. Now the thing is, I've actually seen builds of this kit online where people haven't actually filled the rear join between the canopy section and the fuselage, on the dorsal spine that is. I did, because it's solid fuselage. That took a lot as well. But we got there in the end. Would I recommend this? You know what, yes I would. If you want to become a better modeller, now I'm not saying I'm a better modeller as a result of this, but that is in theory what should happen, or what should transpire when you have a go at a kit like this. It does build into a nice, unusual looking aircraft. It's 1/32 scale, as I say. It's quite small. I mean, I bought it on one of the bases from my 1/48 scale kits. I'd never done a camouflage pattern like this before, which involved a lot of airbrushing and touching up and rebrushing and then touching up and whatnot. But I managed to get there in the end. I got the paint faded, tried some new weathering techniques, which were variations on what I already do. You know what, I'll just pick the damn thing up. The underside, I kept weathering to a kind of a minimum. I didn't go overboard. I mean, hopefully it's realistic, but I'm glad I built it. And it did prove the antidote. No, the Tamiya was the antidote, wasn't it? This was the poison. But it provided a nice counterbalance to the Tamiya kit, because I started this one in, I think, November. Well, I got it at Telford. It was actually given to me by Sam Magazine, but by the old editor who's no longer there. So I don't know where this might show up, whether I'm obliged to send it to Sam Magazine because technically I took possession of it from Sam Magazine, or whether I can send it to where the editor has gone off to, which is Sammy, Scale Aircraft Modelling International. So I'll keep you posted on that one. But anyway, it's done, and I'm quite happy with the overall result, even though it was a bit of a bind. I mean, the wheels, people talk about dragon instructions being vague. There was quite a lot of parts in the wheel assembly, and one just wonders what quality control makes it, or is there even quality control on kits like this? When Azure, which is I think the Special Hobby, they're the same company, it's like Trumpeter and Hobby Boss sort of thing. When they release a kit, someone must have to build it to make sure it goes together okay. And you just sort of wonder what they deem acceptable. Blah blah blah. It is what it is, and there it is. Done and dusted, and very dusty looking. That's what I was trying to achieve. Very similar to the Corsair, more of a faded, scoured look rather than a dirty, grimy look. There's not an awful lot of photographic reference for these, but I'll tell you the reason that I went for this kit. If you remember, I've already built a Caudron, which was the what was it? The C.714? Can't remember what the Blue Racer, which appeared in Sam Magazine. And if any of you read the article, I finished the article off by saying that speed was now an important, because war clouds were looming at the end of the 30s, and that speed was now required of an aircraft for an entirely different purpose than winning trophies and races. It's for keeping people alive. But if you remember, the Caudron racer that I built was white 13, and I thought, because this one, as you can see, is in fact white 13, but it is a machine of war, that it made a nice counterbalance to the peacetime Caudron bearing white 13. But there we go, that's another one. That's the table kind of clear. I'm actually considering something a little bit different. Yes, it's an aircraft, but it doesn't have a propeller up front. It's going to be this one, I think. Now, this might change, but I'm thinking of having a go with this next, the two-seater A10. Hobby Boss 1/48 scale, which obviously will be bigger than the Corsair, so I'll have trouble photographing it again until I come up with something. But yeah, I just feel like something different. Get out of the World War II era. I'm not generally a big fan of jets, in that I tend to find them a bit samey, and I like to build things that really don't exist as such. And although technically I think these have been these are no longer in service now, are they? But it's an unusual. I mean, it looks almost like it could have a propeller on it because of it doesn't look like a jet. In other words, it doesn't look like your average jet. So I think I might have a go with that one next. But anyway, I'm enjoying some of our local brew, but in a glass that I was given. I asked if I could buy one, but the barman went in and just said, shh, just shoved it in my bag. We've just been on holiday in Valencia in Spain, and this is one of the local brews, Estrella Now you pronounce the C Helvetia, so it's Estrella Galicia, but this isn't Estrella Galicia that's in it. And when I was there wasn't much in the way of choice for plastic modelers. There was 2 hobby shops that I was able to locate, but one concentrated mainly on railways and the other one was mostly remote control. But I did pick up this little thing, which I've since read several reviews that it's a dreadful kit. But anyway, who cares? You have to buy something, don't you? I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers! Solid glass.